good sense. If it was common, everyone would have it. Yeah, see, that's where we got to kind of get some consensus here. Here's how I look at this, okay? And this is just me, right? I'll break it apart into two separate words, common and sense. We know what a sense is. It's a feeling. If I'm going to make a decision in the field, right, and I'm kind of looking at maybe a structural beam, has that been connected in accordance with the approved construction documents? Well, if I looked at the approved construction documents, there's a column and a beam and a clip, and I'm looking at all these bolts, and I'm trying to determine, does that make sense to me? And then I say, oh, yeah, that's common sense. I'm going to look at the approved construction documents, and I'm going to verify the bolts, the connections, things of that nature, common sense with respect to an application, okay? On how I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to look at the approved drawings, right, for compliance with the approved construction documents and the code, right? Sound, prudent judgment based on a simple perception of the situation or facts, right? So keep it simple, don't complicate it, and we move on. All right, I bring that out for a reason. Okay. It also could look at it could look like this, right? Sound, practical judgment concerning everyday matters, or a basic ability to perceive, understand, and judge in a manner that is shared by nearly all people. So it could take on to be a more global type of common sense. But as we kind of get into our own little world here of technical and code things, it really helps us understand that after a while and proper training, you'll see it by talking to a lot of us in the industry that over time, all these technical requirements as we know them tend to kind of be common sense until we get a new set of codes like we have had adopted here as of March 1st. Now we got to put our kind of hats on to relearn certain things that have changed. All right. But over time, it'll be common sense again. Let me show you how to kind of get into a problem solving technique here. I want to go over this with you. This is going to help you maybe become from a good inspector to an excellent inspector. Let's look at this here. Interpretation and applying intent requires what? Developing skills in critical thinking. Critical, dive in deep, right? Do the research, think, independent decision making and problem solving. Take a look at this here. This is my critical thinking skills wheel. Number one, right here. See this? Number one, we all have to say to ourselves, well, you know what? We've got to make a decision. You got to realize that maybe you have to make a decision. Something may not look right, but you got to make a decision. Number two, you got to analyze the application. Then you've got to reason it within your head, right? In order to hopefully evaluate the application and make a decision to solve maybe a problem. Like I didn't know what I was looking at out in the field as an inspector. Let me give you an example. You ready? And this is a true story. You see this thing here? We hired a new inspector at the jurisdiction that I worked in several years ago. And when I was a building official. And the gentleman came to us with a pretty good carpentry background. He was a carpenter, worked on a lot of heavy commercial and industrial jobs. But in the state of Ohio, if you're a building inspector, you have to currently be able to inspect building structural systems, mechanical, right? Fire alarm, things of that nature, right? So I took this new inspector that we hired out to a job with us, and they were renovating and altering an existing building that was probably built back in the 1960s, and they had steam heating throughout the building. So I says, come on over here. Let's take a look at the approved construction documents. So I was kind of going over some piping with him and things of that nature. And then we saw this unit sitting here, right? This unit sitting here. And I asked the gentleman, I says, well, what do you think that thing is? And he looks at me like a deer in headlights, right? I knew he never saw anything like this. And he said, that's an air conditioning unit. And I said to myself, well, yeah, it does condition the air, but qualify that. What are we actually looking at? And he didn't quite know. He says, well, help me out, Jerry. I says, not a problem. I says, here, let's go back to the approved construction documents. It showed the piping and it showed like a rectangular box with pipes coming in and going out. But what it really didn't show on the approved drawings was the clear steam coil, because on the other side of this plate here, there's two steam coils basically. And what you're actually looking at here is the steam input and the steam output. And you're looking at two three-way valves here. And these things right here are called bucket traps, right? And it's understood that if you didn't come from the mechanical trades, you really wouldn't understand this stuff. But that's how we train, that's how we mentor new people, right? On these particular types of inspections. So after that, I mean, he felt pretty good. And we continued to work together, and he's a friend of mine today. And I tell you what, he's a good building official today. Uh, and he really does a nice job. So this is my example here of good critical thinking. Maybe if you don't know what something is, go back to the approved drawings, maybe turn the pages. There's some details, right? If you're out there all alone as an inspector, I don't know, maybe take a picture and text it to somebody in your department. Say, hey, what is this thing? Or maybe you can come over here and give me a hand, right? Next one I'm going to go over with you. I'm going to show you something here. You see this? This is an existing building, okay? This is an existing building. That was an office building, and they changed the occupancy of this office building and they made it into a restaurant. Okay. The front of the house was the dining part. The back of the house was the commercial kitchen. Well, if I show you this, you don't have to know this. I mean, if you're mechanical or a building official or a plans examiner, you better hone in on this. You should know what you're looking at here. I ask you on this particular mechanical addition to a commercial kitchen, it's a change of occupancy. Is something missing here? Right? David Walter, very good. Service platforms and guards, very good. We did this plan review. I don't know, this was like 10 years ago, something like that. I was working for this engineering company and we were doing a plan review for a building department. And we put in the plan review, hey, you're missing platforms and guards according to the mechanical code. But here's how this whole thing kind of transitioned here. Basically, the installation involved new kitchen equipment, right? In an existing building. However, look at the sloped roof here, right? Look at the sloped roof, and I'll get into that in a minute. We put on the plan review, that the kitchen and the hood systems were submitted separately. And after the building alteration plans came in, the architectural, mechanical, and electrical, this was for a county building department. It was cited on the kitchen exhaust hood plan review that platforms and guards were required for the sloped roofs. However, the revised hood plans indicated platforms, guards, etc., with details all to be provided by the owner. However, nobody submitted plans as far as a revision. So the whole thing got built and the building official was driving around. I believe it was one Friday afternoon. And he called us up and he says, hey, Jerry, he says, guess what happened? I says, what? He says, the owner's got this place up and running. He didn't even get any rough inspections, didn't submit any revised plans. The building official issued a phased approval with some contingencies. So the owner had kind of a long road to go to get it back into compliance. But I wanted to kind of show you this because what we have here, and it's a good example for anybody. This is my existing building here. Now, what would you say the slope of the roof is here? Would you agree with me that the slope on this roof is greater than a 412 pitch? I'm throwing a little technical stuff in here for everybody. Would you agree with me that the slope of this roof is greater than a 412 pitch? Yes or no? Where's all my technical people? Where's my architects, my
You
engineers?
got all yeses going there, Jerry. We got 6, 10 yeses going.
I love it. Fantastic. So that being said, right, I want to just kind of show you how we communicate here. Absolutely, right? According to, well, this is the Ohio Mechanical Code, I should say, not the OBC, but the mechanical code kind of comes in here in the mechanical code and it says, hey, you know what? You need platforms and guards, but be careful here. Access shall not require walking on roofs having a slope greater than 4 units vertical in 12 horizontal. So did you get that? You can't even walk up this roof here. You follow? If I go back, how are you going to put a ladder up here and even walk up to the platform? You can't, right? So maybe a good way to do it would be to maybe take a platform, right, that's been built and maybe run a catwalk across from here to the gable end, right, with guards, right? That's a solution, right, to properly walk across from the ladder through the catwalk to get to the platform. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that happens, and this is the stuff that you need to weigh in accordingly. So, are there alternatives? Absolutely, there are. Can we have flexibility in the code? Yes, we can, as well as the obligation to approve alternatives. You need to kind of keep an open mind on new technology, okay? And maybe some different methods or maybe some orientation of equipment may be different. But let's kind of take a look at something here. If I showed you a picture like this, let's kind of go into the residential realm a little bit. What if I showed you a picture like that? What are you thinking? Is that an alternative that I could possibly use to our residential code of Ohio? What do you think? That's pretty cool. So what we're looking at here is an addition on maybe the back of a residential dwelling. Pretty amazing, isn't it? I think it's pretty cool. But I'm going to ask you a question. Can I maybe build that prescriptively according to our residential code? Probably not. There may be some engineered design here to support the loads, things of that nature, right? But it could be done, right? Pretty cool. Maybe the person who owns the house is a pilot, wants something cool, right? All right, moving on. Approaches to inspection. Let's kind of carry this through here. Yeah. So your approach to inspection, right? The menu choices for the day. Are you the happy person on the left side here? Or are you maybe having a bad day today, maybe sad or maybe feeling kind of distraught, things of that nature, or maybe somebody kind of made you mad? Where are you at, right? Menu choices for the day. You know, the way I look at it as, you know what? Every day's a new day. I'm starting over. I'm waking up. I'm going to have a good day. That's the way I look at it. Sure. I mean, life's going to throw you curveballs, right? Screwballs, all different kinds of things, right? But you know what? At the end of the day, you regroup, you do it all over tomorrow, right? Today's a new day. So start it out on a positive note. Your attitude, whether you're an inspector, building official, plans examiner, permit tech, secretary, no matter who you are, check your attitude, check your behavior. We'll talk about methods and actions because believe me, all of these things have a profound effect on the outcome. It's all based on communication, isn't it? Right? All right, here's one for you. Attitude is a little thing that makes a big difference. Okay. If you got a bad attitude, flush it. You got to move on. You've got to move on. Have a positive approach. Respect helps us with courtesy and diplomacy. We want to raise the bar of professionalism. However, we haven't really qualified professionalism, but we will raise the bar of professionalism, improve the image of the inspector. And it sums it up where it makes life easier all around. Believe me, attitude has a profound effect on your behavior and how one's behavior is actually looked at, right? So the roles of the inspector, the plans examiner, the building official, you are the ambassador of your jurisdiction. Always remember that, okay? You may be the educator as well, whether you know it or not, in the field. If you're doing an inspection and maybe the building owner or the homeowner asks you a few questions, well, you have to communicate in terms of trying to help people understand what you're talking about. Maybe they don't understand the codes and standards like you do. You may have to kind of water it down to convey the information so they understand it. So you will be the educator many times. You'll be the facilitator to keep the projects moving on, moving forward in a positive direction. Although maybe there's going to be some maybe hiccups along the way, maybe some changes on the project. We have to be prepared for that. Okay. Now, if you're the ambassador of your department, think about this and type it in the chat. Who might be the first person that a customer would be in contact with when I entered your building department? So I'm your customer. I'm going to open the door and go right into your building department. Who can I expect to see as the first point of contact? Type it in the chat. I'm seeing the front desk, the permit tech, the office staff, the receptionist, right? Absolutely, right? So what are you telling me? Is the building official well insulated, right? You got to go through the permit text before I could get to the building official. That was just a little funny there, right? But you're right. You're going to run into the office staff, right? So, kind of make certain whether it's the office staff or maybe the inspection staff has offices or maybe cubicles in that area as well. Yeah, it's either the permit tech, the office secretaries, or even the inspectors is the first point of contact, right? So the key to this is, of course, you're the ambassadors for the public department, right? You need to gain public trust and support, right? Things of that nature. Yeah, right. If only one, right, Tom? Yeah. Gain code compliance. That's the key. You need to be an educator, okay? No matter who you are. You could be the new inspector coming into town, right? And on your job. Maybe it's your first week on the job, but you know what? If you've been around for a while, you got some experience, you have something to offer as well. If you've been around for 20 years, 10 years, things of that nature, a skilled inspector is committed to education. You have to be, right? Even continuing education, outreach efforts of the department. You have to reach out to the customers. How do you do that? Maybe by providing information on your websites. Now we're coming into spring, summer, right? You know what's going to happen in our building departments. I'll speak residential right now. You're going to be getting submittals for decks, pools, what else? Building additions, new houses, things of that nature. Um, we had, I can't tell you how many pools and decks always came in when the weather got nice, right? Because people kind of get outside, right? We get away from that winter hibernation and we go outside and say, wow, that'd be a great place for an in-ground pool, wouldn't it? So we had a lot of these things coming in our jurisdiction. And I got to tell you, I spent, I can't tell you, countless hours at the front counter as the building official trying to help homeowners at that time with, they wanted to do their own electrical work. And I said, that's not a problem. You have to submit some documents, show us a complete description of what you're doing electrically. And we administer the National Electrical Code, et cetera, et cetera. This was years ago. And then I figured out, you know what, maybe I should kind of draft up some handouts, and I did. So I spent, I don't know, maybe about a month on AutoCAD drawing up a whole bunch of stuff, and I put them on the front counter in the building department just to kind of help them out. It's not basically a design, right? We're not designing the work for them. It's providing them information on the codes and standards, right? Provide information on the website, maybe plan reviews at the job site that will help people, right? So maybe like an informational handout. So this is what I did. I don't know. I gave them some code sections, but I put something at the top here that wasn't included on this slide, that this is not a design. This is just information. Please consult a state licensed electrical contractor. That's how I kind of approached it here, and kind of gave them some common code sections here and things to avoid. I can't tell you how many times, you know, you go out in the field and, oh, we forgot that the electrical service conductors overhead were actually going over where we wanted to put our above ground pool, you know? So just kind of like little informational bits that we can actually help people to avoid disaster, right? Because the more you help them, the more we can avoid something happening, right? Kind of take a look at this here. Community outreach strategies. Now's the perfect time, right? If you have a community and you have good rapport maybe with the community, you know, put on a little seminar for the folks. Hey, you know what, it's kind of deck season. We have some really good prescriptive design approaches that are integrated in our residential code. You know, take a look at this. I mean, I'm looking at something here that's not too good, right? That's a bad failure there, right? Two important messages need to be conveyed to a community. How does the community benefit from codes, right? And then look at number two. How and why construction codes are vital for the protection of public safety, health, and welfare. Now, again, in the state of Ohio, we don't indicate this in our building codes, this word called a permit, okay? We have a word called approval in Ohio. I have to kind of put my Ohio hat on here, right? We need approvals, right? So, I mean, when you share this stuff, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of go over some technical requirements that are integrated in our code, plus chapter one kind of stuff. What is the process for submittal here in the state of Ohio as it references the residential code of Ohio, or maybe on a commercial Ohio building code thing? Chapter one is very similar. This is your chance to educate your community and build safer communities and get that good buy-in from the public. They love to hear information from good professionals like us that are running the departments, right? So be a facilitator. I want to share this with you, okay? I want to share this with you. You ready for this? And then we're going to take a break here. Give me a couple more slides and we'll take a quick 15-minute break. So here, if it's a puzzle, look at yourself as a piece of the puzzle. This is how I do it, okay? Here's the deal, okay? If the red part right here is the point of submittal, okay? We're just talking colors here. They don't have any indication, but the red piece here, this is the point that the client, the customer, submits construction documents right there. It goes from the submittal part, now it goes to plan review, right? Maybe I'm submitting for a, I don't know, a brand new building, right? It goes into plan review. Once the plan review comes out, it goes to the building official, right? The building official may say, okay, my plans examiner recommends a phased approval. That's cool, right? So we'll issue a phased approval at that point. Remember, submittal, plan review, issuance of approval is right here. From that point, all the inspections that are indicated and provided to the customer by the building official, along with the approved construction documents, are now ready for inspection. Now it's the approval holders time to call for all required inspections. That's the blue part. After all of the inspections are taken care of and all of the certificates have come back for what we call the certificate of occupancy, that is the very last piece here, the green piece. So I've kind of summarized it for you, didn't I? Submittal, plan review and approval, inspections, and after all is inspected and everything has come back adequately, The ultimate goal that the owner wants is a certificate of occupancy to properly occupy this brand new building. So you see how we kind of keep it going? Same here with the gears, right? We are a piece of the machinery here. The gears all work together along the way. And that's how we look at it. You are an integral part of this professional team that starts from the submittal and goes all the way through to and including the certificate of occupancy at the end of the project. Make certain that you understand the process specifically. This goes out to new inspectors. I know if you're coming in now, you're looking at chapter one and you're saying, wow, this thing, I could read it like a law book. And believe me, but when you read it, get some help from the building official and people that have been around for a while. Help them explain that chapter one to you, because I got to tell you, that is what you need to administer the codes, to properly understand your authority in the state of Ohio. Okay. All right. Meg, we're going to take a 15-minute break here. Okay.
Right on. Let's say we're back at 9:28.
Okay. Very exact today. Very good. We'll be here at 9:28. Thanks, Meg.
All right.
Hello? Hello? You can hear me. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Well, let me test this. So if I turn it off, it's working properly, I guess. That's all I need to see. Our tech, I was emailing him for IT. And so, all right. Thank you. That's all I needed. All right. Have a good one.
All right, Jerry, your screen is up. We just about ready to get started here. You're on mute. Jerry, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I was talking to the wall, wasn't I, Meg?
You were talking to the wall, and I could see your mouth moving because your camera was on, which is good. But now we've got you loud and clear.
Yeah, I'm back live. How about that? Thanks
All
for the help, Meg.
right.
I need that help this morning, you know?
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. If you could please take your seats, we're going to keep on going. Meg, quick question for you. What time do we go to in this class?
You've got till say about 11, maybe 11:15.
Okay, sounds good. Got it. All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's continue on here. We left off talking about what it's like to try to be a facilitator, right? To help people understand the process that is required and needed regarding what we do, not only here in the state of Ohio, but all across the United States and different countries as well. So, as a facilitator, if we continue this, we need to change the public's perception. Always realize who your customers are, right? I mean, it's the public, isn't it? Right? You need to be a facilitator rather than a regulator or an enforcer. I kind of like diverge that kind of language. I always have. I always wanted to help people and be a problem solver. I don't know. I look at everything as maybe an application based puzzle, possibly, and I look towards, maybe if I'm looking at a set of plans, how can I approve this to the degree that it can be approved to or recommend the approval to the building official? I always look at that to just try to, can I keep the thing moving forward? And if you can't, you can't. There's other ways around it. As an inspector, if you're out in the field, you need to get those approved construction documents, look at them, see if you could facilitate doing the inspections, things of that nature accordingly, right? So we want to be a facilitator rather than a regulator or an enforcer. Don't go out there and try to find every little violation you can and write it up and say, aha, I got you. That's not the game here. The game is to be professional, right? Do a good job, do a safe job, and keep the project moving if it can be moved along. Be a resource rather than an adversary, right? Your job as an excellent inspector, plans examiner, building official is, helping work out maybe to find solutions for some of the conflicts that we have, right? I mean, if you've been around for a while, you know exactly where we're coming from. Maybe you know some good code sections that, maybe some exceptions to the rule you may want to share with maybe a meeting with an architect or an engineer in your office or maybe out on the job site. Or for that much, you can kind of recommend maybe on an electrical job. Maybe if they came up to you and say, hey, we got to reroute that feeder over from point A to point B. And, we got just maybe one or two more than 90-degree turns, make some recommendations. Well, you can put a junction box here after the third 90 kind of a thing as a pull point. Use your experience to maybe make some recommendations. And if it's major in the field, they'll submit revised drawings. Basically, our jobs go beyond the simple duty of enforcing rigid rules. Understand, number one, right here, always go back and say, who are our customers, right? Who are our customers? It's the installers, technicians, homeowners, contractors. It's the associates you work with, designers, the home builders. Everybody is our customer. So keep that in perspective, right? Customer service, first impressions are everything. We'll talk a little bit about expectations. We talked about being a good listener. You need to choose your words carefully, know how to handle complaints, and be honest, right? The first impressions, right? Greet yourself. Say, hi, I'm Jerry with the local building department. I'm here for an inspection, right? Smile. It's okay to smile. Believe me, right? When people smile, right? It makes you feel good. Maybe on a first introduction, right? Things of that nature. Identify yourself, have a positive attitude, be courteous and respectful, and be cheerful and friendly. I mean, not overly cheerly and friendly, but, you know, keep it professional, right? You're here to perform a service, right? Next, be helpful. Ask if there's any questions after or maybe while you're conducting your inspection, or if you're in a meeting with some folks in your building department, be helpful, right? Be fair, right? And I must say, remain neutral as well. That helps as well. Keep an open mind because there are several solutions to multiple applications and maybe multiple problems, right? If you indicate to somebody that you're going to be somewhere, be punctual, right? If you're maybe getting off the phone in your building department and the last word you indicate to the contractor is, hey, I'll be there at 10 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden you're running late, right? Because you got tied up on one inspection that took longer than it really needed to. Maybe give them a call or a text or something like that, or call the office to tell them to get in touch with that contractor and say, hey, I'm running 15 minutes late. Be courteous, but by all means, be punctual, right? And it's okay to smile, everybody. It's okay to smile. All right. So we kind of take a look at some of these things, expectations, perhaps, right? Uh, Customers expect accurate information. In other words, you will provide accurate information, right? And if you can't provide accurate information, maybe you just say, well, I need to go look that up in the code and I'll get back with you. Give them some kind of a time frame, right? Maybe you're on a phone call and all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe the electrical contractor has a question. Do I need a disconnect outside of that accessory structure that I'm running a 100 amp feeder to from the main building? Just a code question, And if you don't know right off the top of your head, or you don't have a code book in front of you, you say, I'll have to go back and take a look at the National Electrical Code. I'll be in touch with you, things of that nature. It goes the same for electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and even building, right? Answers to inquiries. Somebody emails you a question, provide an answer, a timely answer, if possible. A lot of times you don't want to do a lot of things in an email. You don't want to write big dissertations. Maybe it's simpler just to have a phone conversation. It's called good time management. Realize this stuff and follow up when promised. Be punctual, and courteous behavior is key and essential, right? Meeting the customer's expectations, right? Being courteous and punctual. Again, you see this word punctual, right? Following through with what you say you're going to do or what you state you're going to do. You know what? We have these calendars, they're electronic, right? I mean, I use an electronic calendar. I used to use a paper calendar, but I had to gravitate towards the electronic stuff, right? And it's cool. I mean, I tell you what, I live off of my Outlook calendar. I put everything on this calendar, and I got to tell you, it keeps me well organized and it keeps me well scheduled, right? If I have to follow through, maybe on a deadline, maybe a set of drawings or something's due on a certain day, or I got to have a plan review over back to the building official. Maybe it's a hot button item. I need to put it on my calendar and make sure I follow through with this stuff. Okay. Do the research. Do the research. Do the research. I said it 3 times, right? If you are uncertain of maybe a decision that you're going to make in the field, or a decision or some information you need to get to a customer, they expect an answer from you. So maybe in some cases you can say, well, this is a pretty complicated code question. I'm going to do the research and get into the code commentary, maybe on some exceptions to a vertical parapet that is required on a firewall. I'm just going to throw that out there. And is there any exceptions that maybe I can, share with the architect who's designing 2 separate buildings that are going to be separated by a firewall. And something like that, you may want to provide good code sections after doing the research and understanding it yourself. Be accurate and honest. Return calls and emails promptly. Okay. You can under promise and over deliver. Just say, hey, yeah, I'm going to look that up on that firewall parapet. I'll get back with you tomorrow. And they'll say, yeah, that's cool. Not a problem. And you know what? Maybe you got some downtime this afternoon and you do the research and you respond accordingly. You know what? You've under promised and over delivered. Beautiful. Customers don't expect you to be perfect. They just expect you to fix things when they go wrong, of course, right? Kind of makes sense. So public trust and acceptance here. It promotes the adoption of codes, right? When the public comes out and says, we really understand why you do what you do, I think then you got it beat, right? But you know what? There's a lot of different people out there with a lot of different thoughts, right? Well, maybe some people say, I don't need all these codes, I don't agree with them. But you know what? Over time, you see that safety and the protection of the public is paramount, right? It improves public safety. That's why we have our building codes, right? So share the knowledge out there. That's what it's all about. You need to make decisions, okay? You need to make decisions. Now, I'm going to throw something up here. You ready? Are checklists good? Are checklists good? Yes or no? If I have to do inspections on like a structural inspection, would a checklist be good? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Good, good. But let me kind of hit you with this one. When can a checklist be bad? When can a checklist be bad? Can you offer up some conversation in the chat on that one? When can a checklist be bad? Let me give you an example. Yeah, Andy, when you stop thinking critically about what you're looking at. Yeah, exactly right. But yeah, when it blinds you, absolutely. So if you've got a nice checklist that you've created, but not overwhelming, right? And you have like tunnel vision, you don't look at anything else but that checklist. That's the wrong approach. Now, a checklist can be drafted up so unwieldy. I could make you a checklist for a structural inspection with 100 items on it. That would be unwieldy. It would be not used at all. Don't even go down that road. A checklist is just for you, maybe not to forget a few important parts, but inspection is a bit of an art, along with technical expertise, allows you to go into these buildings and look at the systems accordingly, in accordance with the approved construction documents. That's the key here. So checklists are good, especially if you're new in this industry. Please encourage the people that are mentoring you to give you a checklist and train you along the way, make you successful in your department. That's the key here, okay? It's much more than a checklist making decisions. It's challenging and complex, right? You need to work within the framework and the spirit of the code. In other words, in the state of Ohio, it's called the approved construction documents. I'll say that like I'm a broken record, but I got to tell you, you always go back to the approved construction documents. There it is. So the approved CDs and the code is the basis for your decisions. You need to keep an open mind as well, accordingly. Okay. And where I say see page 22, this is referencing the book here that's published by the International Code Council called Inspector Skills. All right. Don't roll the dice out there, right? Say, gee, I need to make a decision. So should I pass it or should I not? And you're really indecisive. Make sure that you make a good decision because you want to be confident in your abilities. If you're not, make a call, send a text. When you get back to the office, if you can't make the decision, have somebody help you, maybe with an application. Get you trained because more than not, it'll come up the same in the future. So technical competence, we're speaking of everybody here. Competence as a code official can be gained through the following. Number one, certification. It feels good when you sit for the test and you come out successfully and you pass the test. Man, I'll tell you what, it just makes you feel like a million bucks, right? That you've done something to fortify yourself. Okay. So technical confidence, another thing, on the job training. And I'm gonna really hone in on the training, on the job training. Supervisors, building officials, you need to train the new people coming into your departments. You need to guide them, have them avoid the pitfalls, because after all, they're new, right? You want to make sure that you train them to be successful. Spend some time with them, show them the ropes. The next one is interpersonal and communication skills training. There it is right there. It's all about communication. We're going to spend some time and talk about that. Training classes like we're getting here today, and you've had in the past 2 days at the Ohio Building Code Academy. There may not be a lot of technical classes, a lot of chapter 1 stuff, things of that nature, process information according to our state laws. But I got to tell you, the technical classes that you're going to go to for your continuing education, right? No matter if you're a design professional, a code official, BBS certified professional, you need to get the technical information as well. You need to read the code, not like a newspaper, but I got to tell you, if you're kind of like me, I like to read the codes, and I'm interested, especially now, March 1st, everybody. In the state of Ohio, we have some new codes that have been adopted. I mean, March 1st was the day that they went into effect. This is cool stuff. I like to read the code because I like to see the new information in these codes. And when we look at the plans, we can see exactly if the plans are in compliance. If you're an inspector out in the field, you know what? Take your code book with you. And at lunchtime, if you're out in the field and you see something a little bit new and you recognize that that's a new code requirement, take a look at that new code. Try to find out all you can. It makes you better, a better inspector, a better plans examiner, and a code official. Network with your colleagues. It's all about that. Go back to the certification. Here it is right here. Maybe you've passed an ICC certification. Maybe now you're a certified building official or a plans examiner, building electrical, mechanical, plumbing, whatever discipline. Get your certification. It enhances your credibility big time, big time. All right, so moving on, talking about technical stuff, right? Competence is displayed by understanding the codes. You need to understand it to explain it to people, right? So the more you understand, the better you are to explain it to people. Understanding the standards. Now, the standards are what's referenced in our codes, kind of like if I go to the building code, I'll give you an example. You go to chapter 27 in the building code. Chapter 27 is going to reference the National Electrical Code. If you go to chapter 9 in the building code, it's going to reference NFPA 13 or 13R or 13D as standards based on automatic sprinkler systems, you see? So you need to understand both performance and prescriptive requirements as well. Now, I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. If you've been around for a while and you're going for another certification, you understand this language. But if you're new, pay attention. Performance and prescriptive. So I got a couple of questions here for you. Number one, what are at least 2 basic technical competencies that a code enforcement professional must possess to be perceived as credible? Can you type something in the chat here? What are at least 2 basic technical competencies? These are technical, right? That a code enforcement professional must possess to be perceived as credible. Great, David, excellent. Experience and knowledge. What else? What else can I possess that would show you that maybe I'm credible? Credentials, certifications. Yeah, maybe some type of professional ID. Yeah, you got it, right? There you go. Yeah, confidence as well, Jason, in your technical ability as well. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, Tom, ability to read plans. You got it. You hit it right on the head. And if you're new to this, right, you need to be guided to understand how to read construction documents like the drawing set, maybe even specifications. New people gravitate towards the people that have been around. People that have been around, supervisors, work with the new people, show them how to do this stuff. Number two, explain the difference between performance-based and prescriptive-based codes. Can you do that? Can you give me a difference? I don't know. What is the difference between performance and prescriptive-based codes? What is the difference between a performance-based and a prescriptive-based code? Any idea? Well, if you don't know, let me kind of help you understand this. Okay. I'm going to show you a picture. You see this picture right here? This is a building. Okay. And this is a real building. I was over in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, I don't know, several years ago, and I kind of took this picture out of the car we were driving in on the freeway, and this is a wild looking building. Can I build this building using a prescriptive approach? That means by picking structural steel from a table out of our Ohio building code? The answer is no, you can't, right? The performance approach will give you maybe loads to resist. It's up to the engineers and the architects to use appropriate materials based on the adequate capacity of accommodating those loads and transmitting those loads. You follow what I'm saying? This is not a prescriptive design. This is a performance-based design. I got to tell you, off the topic, I was more impressed with the scaffolding of this building than the building itself. I was pretty impressed there. But let me kind of give you this here. Prescriptive design. If I come into a table, like in a residential code, perhaps, right? Maybe to size a girder span, or maybe a header span for an interior bearing wall, perhaps, kind of like this here in the basement. You see this right here is an interior bearing wall. I can prescriptively come into the residential code chapter 5 and actually pick a size girder and understand where I need my column supports at here based on the maximum span interval by just referencing a table. This is what prescriptive means. I can come into the code and prescriptively design a component or components relative to supporting floor systems by constructing beams, things of that nature. Okay. That's far different than what we call a performance engineered design. In a case like this, let's say I've got a point load here of 2,000 pounds coming down right in the center of a span of a beam, right? We need to kind of go through a whole bunch of calculations structurally to figure out what we have is called shear and moment diagrams, things of that nature, to properly figure out what materials we could use here to provide a good load carrying path to these particular components. Okay, so that's the difference there. Prescriptive versus performance. So 4 steps if we have to reference a standard. Okay, the code will reference standards many times. I'm going to give you some examples here. In a case like the National Electrical Code, now currently in our state, we're referencing the 2023 NEC, but I have to update my PowerPoint here. However, identify the standard. For an example here, it may come up in our code to reference NFPA 70, and that's the National Electrical Code. The hyphen with the numbers after it is your addition accordingly. You need to locate the book. You need to locate the requirements from the building code as it references the standard to the extent that it references the standard. Then you need to make sure if the design meets the intended criteria determined by the standard. So basically the building codes reference standards. These are additional standards that we need to design and install components with respect to our built environment. Let me give you an example here, okay? So if I went to the Commercial Building Code, Chapter 9, and I went into Section 903.3.1, it gives me some standard information here for automatic fire sprinkler systems. Right here, if I see this code referenced in different areas of the building code, and it's going to tell me, maybe I'm going to have, I don't know, maybe a storage building that exceeds 12,000 square feet, right? And it's going to say, you need an automatic fire sprinkler system designed in accordance with 903.3.1.1. And then you're going to come over here from that point in your code and say, well, what does that number mean? It says NFPA 13 sprinkler requirements, right? And they've got to be designed and installed in accordance with NFPA 13. This is another book that is referenced by our building code for the design and installation of automatic fire sprinkler systems. So you see how this works? Little hopscotch around. That's called communicating within the code to different standards. Okay. Understand there's a perspective to all this stuff. And once you understand this perspective, you can guide your way through a whole bunch of different applications and maybe some different problems to provide solutions, whether you know it or not. Keep reading, keep researching. I mean, you'll get into this stuff. It's like a puzzle. It's pretty cool once you start to understand and navigate through all these codes and standards, but you got to be flexible, right? There's sometimes more than one way to install a system, to build a system. In Ohio, we go off of the approved construction documents. That's key here. But say somebody comes into your building department, you're the building official. They want to come in for a pre-design meeting and kind of beat up a couple of sections of codes that they may have some problems with. I mean, I welcome that all the time. I love it because this is an opportunity for you to be an educator. Share the knowledge of the codes that have been adopted in the state of Ohio. Share the knowledge. See if you can kind of be flexible and come to some kind of good consensus with the designers. That's a good example, right? So that being said, precision is key, but it's really not what we do, and I'll clarify that. Know your boundaries and be consistent, okay? That's what it's all about. So let's go into this. Remember, if we talk about flexibility, right, it's part of your decision-making process. The skilled and successful plans examiner, inspector, and building official, you will keep an open mind. And when necessary, maybe explore some alternatives. Maybe if you're in a meeting with those designers, things of that nature, and clarify and maybe satisfy the intent of a code, right? Any discussion about flexibility and decision-making for that matter is necessarily general in nature. How about this one? When the inspectors come to the job with various personalities, maybe backgrounds and personal life experiences, an approach that is right for one may not work for another. Okay. So each inspector needs to figure out what works best for him or her in applying the code and making the tough calls. Undoubtedly, right here, some will stick closer to the letter of the code. Others will practice greater flexibility based on their comfort level. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. I showed you this before. Can we say, you know what? You don't need platforms and guards here. Would that be a kind of a flexible thing for an application like that? You don't need platforms and guards for this. The answer is no, you cannot be flexible here. No, everybody better see this because think about this. If you left this without platforms and guards to protect the service personnel to service that mechanical equipment and appliances, guess what? Somebody's going to get hurt. They may get hurt. They may die. They may fall off that roof in the middle of winter. You follow what I'm saying? Don't do it. You cannot be flexible. These are really good things. Know your boundaries, right? Here it is. Number one, You recall from your beginning days as inspectors, or maybe when you've been in the field, if you came from the construction industry, or maybe you came from the design side, right? Where you're going to bring all the best practices into our new careers as code enforcement personnel. Well, don't do it, okay? Because don't ask for more than the code requires. Remember, the code is the minimum acceptable thresholds, okay? That's always good advice. And it's a reminder because it's human nature when you come into a new job to base your decisions on past experiences. All right. For example, right here, if you're an inspector with experience in construction trade, there's probably a tendency to impose best practices as if they were requirements. Okay. It's important for you to remember, not only as an inspector, but a plans examiner and a building official, right? You need to ensure the minimum standards of the code are met. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this as we move on. The inspector's job would be easier if construction and the codes that